Here.
Trustee Vettis? Absent. Student trustee Cordova?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's do the flag salute. Dr. Benjamin, do you want to lead us in it? Yeah, okay, that'd be great. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Let's go ahead and do an approval of today's agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, moved by Henderson, second by roll call.
Student trustee Cordova's advisory vote?
Yes.
Trustee Buelna? Sorry. Trustee Henderson? Trustee Hoffman? Trustee Eno?
Yes.
Trustee Vella?
Yes.
Trustee Vettis absent.
Okay, so motion passes. Do we have any requests to address the board?
No, sir.
We don't, okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Just wanted to quickly do a recap of why we're here today. So so today is really looking at our progress towards the 2023 board goals that were established in the month of January of 23. We're also going to be looking at our board professional development goals, you know, clarity on board's roles and responsibilities and governance, fiduciary responsibilities, liabilities, including delegation of authority. And, you know, I think this is a good time to kind of go into the agenda. So we're going to have at 8:50, so in about 6 minutes, Dr. Benjamin will go ahead and set the stage on meeting outcomes, agenda reviews, and ground rules. And then at 9, we're going to go ahead and have a board workshop, which, so I think people are getting confused over what was this board goal. So one of our board goals was actually about really detailing and delineating the board roles and responsibilities. And it had a lot to do with really having new trustees, which we're excited about, and having an understanding about what our fiduciary responsibilities are. And so I want to thank Dr. Francisco Rodriguez for and Tiana Williams for recommending our consultants, Sue Ann, Sam, and Evans. Now, they are a law firm, and I understand that, but they are not acting in a law capability representing us on any case. That they're coming in as consultants. They happen to be a law firm. I know many law firms provide workshops on board rules, on Brown Act. I've actually sat in some of them in my years as an elected official. And I do want to, you know, also let the community know and let the board members know that, you know, I was not able to put Brown Act in here. We're going to probably have that workshop at a later time. But I did want to, again, reiterate that this consultant is a law firm, but they're coming in as a consultant. And we did not let Office of General Counsel know right away. But I did, you know, once I caught that, I did ask the chancellor to make her aware that we were going to hire this firm to do this workshop. Again, you know, want to apologize about kind of a misunderstanding. I thought in my head we were doing Brown Act. It sounded distinct to me, but it wasn't. Okay. Then we have a break at 10:15, and then we have the discussion really on the results of the survey, which Dr. Benjamin is going to go through. And Dr. Benjamin, you went ahead and gave everyone the survey, or are we going to do it today? You sent it out. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, great. All right. So again, we have about 3 minutes till until we get to Dr. Benjamin. So I just wanted to briefly kind of, you know, give you guys a little bit I want to thank all the board members and all of your resilience. We really have done so much work on basic student needs, as much as food security and real, robust conversations about housing and employment and mental health. We're looking at mental health apps. We're looking at, you know, uh, our technology for our students. So students have really come to a great focus of the board this year, which I've noticed. And thank you, trustee, for your student trustee for your help in getting us to a point where I see that because you're on the board, we're really also focusing on the student experience, which is our number one. That should be our number one. Each of the 9 colleges have received the reaffirmation of accreditation for the next 7 years. So congratulations to all of you on that and all of the staff here and every single person in this district that has made that happen. We, you know, had a $10 million statewide request for LGBT community that went statewide, which is now part of the permanent budget. We also received about 2.5 million for ELAC's business entrepreneurship. So a lot of work. Thank you also, Vice President Eno, for your work as legislative chair. It's been really a lot of work, right? But it's fun and fulfilling. And then we continue to, I want to thank also our commitment to diversity and inclusion. And there's been really robust conversations. I want to thank Vice President Henderson and the Chancellor for really advocating for us to be able to have the resources and provide, we're strengthening the UMOJA program, the AOI programs, our dream centers. I actually, have been very impressed with a lot of the community outreach that has also gone out. Our facilities, and thank you to our chair of facilities. We've had several industry days where we outreach into the LGBT African American community, our business community. I know I presided over a couple of build out events, and so I really think that that's been a real accomplishment. We opened our first climate center at West LA College. We've done avionics, bachelor degrees. We opened biomanufacturing technology over at Pierce College, and that went really great. I want to, also thank Trustee Hoffman in her role as, statewide league president has really gotten us closer to the meat and potatoes of how we can better serve students and really providing a lot of guidance. I want to thank Trustee Hernandez, who is not here today, but she has also been really helpful in as chair of Basic Needs, that committee, that ad hoc committee, who still working with our interim housing and our nonprofits. Fantastic. We gave our adjunct professors health benefits. That's really big. So that's something that the board did this year. We solidified our Metro Pass. We're still, getting that funding for our students. We did a new website for LACCD, believe it or not, for the whole district. So I really want to thank Vice Chancellor Litz. I don't know if he's here today, but I happen to like it. I hope some of the people are liking it. Our student trustee has really liked it. And we did our topping off ceremony at Southgate, thanks to our facilities committee. And so we're really at the forefront, and we were a big lobbying part of getting $300 million statewide for nursing programs throughout the state and community colleges. So I want to thank again Maria Veloz and the Chancellor. And we are putting out an RFP soon for student housing. So that again, just tons and tons of things that we've done. Now, does that match our board goals, right? That we've done, that we put for ourselves in January? Well, we're going to see today. And we still have time. We still have a little bit over 5 months where we can complete these board goals. And so, I'm excited about it. So at this point, I think I'm right on time. Well, I'm 2 minutes late, Dr. Benjamin, but I give you the floor.
Oh, sorry about that. So at the end, our hope is that have some direction in terms of what you want to do in adjusting these goals. And then when we come back in January, it will be a full year. The chancellor will have more of a report, a progress report on each one, so you can really see where you are. So that's our, so we're taking the temperature today. So I don't want you to feel bad about what's happening. We can make adjustments. And then we'll be at the end, it'll be noon. So that's it,
Wonderful.
President.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's go forward.
And now I think it's time for the professional development. I think this is that. Oh, so we're gonna, oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right, yes, go ahead. All right. Put my slideshow up. So still have a beautiful scene there for you this morning to start with. Mid-year goal check. So here are the ground rules, and these are the same ones I think I shared with you before. Know these things, I just like to start out with it anyway. So today we'll have a conversation and work through, and we want you to listen as an ally, listen and engage to really feel comfortable talking. Just kind of jump in, make it conversational if we can, and see this as an opportunity to learn and plan effectively for the district. You're just not doing things in a way that's haphazard. You have a plan, you have direction, and that's the whole purpose. And then, of course, in the way you treat each other, recognize and respect that each of you is in a different place and you have a right to your opinion and perspectives. I always give the example of the household in which I grew up. There were 4 children, and we all grew up with the same influences, the same parents, but we are as different as night and day, the 4 of us. So imagine, you don't have to imagine, look at what it's like when people grew up in your household, and here you all are working together, completely different experiences, and all of those experiences come to bear in this room when you get together. So you have to have, and the decisions you're making are so critical to the success of students. All these people, that's an awesome responsibility that you have. So you owe it to each other to be respectful and consider each other's opinions and to listen well. Then look for opportunities in your conversations where you can join the other person. It is so hard not to judge. Let's try not to do that. Let's see if we can hear what the other person is saying and give it serious consideration. And then if you object, it's okay to object or disagree, but it's how we do that. And then we go back to the second one. We want to do that respectfully. Okay. And then to be fully present, no multitasking, which is difficult these days because we always have distractions with our phones and especially with our phones. And then our laptops, we can do work, we can do all kinds of stuff. So that's what we want you to pay attention to try not to go in that direction today. And so we are going to start. We're just going to plow through these. Now, there are 7 of you on the board, and I know you must have had really busy schedules because only 3 of you completed the survey. No, we didn't send one to you. Yeah, not your bad, our bad. So we're going to just walk through these, and you can add comments.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are we gonna do this part right now, or are we gonna do the board workshop on
I
governance?
I got confused because I'm looking at the wrong one. We're going to do the governance piece
Yes,
first. That's what I was explaining. Yes. So we won't walk through these because you're going to do your professional development, and we start at 10:15. All right, I had the wrong schedule. Sorry about that. So
so if we have the slideshow for first workshop retreat is really in parts. The first part is, if you look at 4.1, the board specifically wants to build a capacity for effective board governance. So I'm thinking about how to put together, this is not it.
Yeah, this is not. Yep, this is not a. Yeah.
little pause here. Right,
What you sent me, and I can forward it.
Thank you, Kelsey.
thank you. Yeah. Sorry for the confusion here. We've got a couple different. Yeah. Yeah, I sent it to the board yesterday. The materials for the workshop related to effective board governance. We're happy to have Sue-Ann Salmon Evans, who's here to provide guidance on this conversation. So we'll bring up that PowerPoint in just a moment. If you have your phone or your computer with you, it was sent to you yesterday afternoon when I received it. So we will go through that. Is that sent over here? The PowerPoint itself? Right. Oh, okay.
Good morning.
Start with you. Let's do some introductions.
You're honest about it, so thank you.
But have anything in particular want to mention?
Say hello to her.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Kelsey, on the board, can you go over your.
David Vella, I'm board president this year. And I've been a trustee since 2018. Pleasure.
Alexi Cordova, I'm the student, and I'm grateful to be here so I can see how the board is expected to conduct themselves this year, and I'm just excited to see all your goals. Thank you.
Ann Kaufman, I was elected in 2015. I'm also the Triple CT, so the Community College League Trustee Board President this year, and I've been on the league board for the 7 years. My day job, I work at Glendale College and I run transfer, career, student employment, cooperative work experience. Thank you.
So what we could do while we put the I know you have a PowerPoint presentation. While we put it up, I think we should just go ahead and go forward.
Yeah.
And have you just work from your presentation. Yeah, and then we'll catch up.
So the first slide is the agenda, and it starts with introduction. So you guys were right on target there. And if I can introduce myself, I'm Sue-Ann Evans. I am an attorney with Janice Walliver Kelly, but I'm not an attorney today. Is that fair?
That's fair to say. Yeah.
But I am experienced with boards through my work as an attorney. I have been working with school districts, community college districts for 30 plus years, and started out in litigation, which I still do, but that brought me before boards in closed session on some pretty tricky issues. And from there, my experience expanded into just day-to-day operations, school districts and community college districts, and some of the issues that can come out of that, and some of the ways we resolve issues before they become a problem or litigation. And in doing that, I have seen so many different ways of governance, and each district, community college district, is its own situation, and there are two that are the same. But there are certain things about effective governance that run across and studied. And so this isn't just my experience. We're pulling from studies to talk about effective governance. And I've also looked at your particular documents, make sure that how they line up with effective governance, so that we can talk about that. So we'll talk about the basic functions. We'll talk about trustee duty. your culture. What is your culture? What does that mean? The role and responsibilities of the board president. We'll focus on that because that also conforms what the board members' parameters are as well. And, any limitations on board members. And then getting into the, oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, we got there. Okay. Understanding roles and delegation of authority, particularly under your board policies. And then a summary of boardsmanship, which is really sort of a takeaway for you all to have as you, and what an important day you have. And I appreciate being able to be part of it. Goals are just so critical, and you'll hear about goals and how effective governance is the ability to attain your goals on mission. Okay, well, this is the handout slide. So these are really small, but I'll keep it up here so you can kind of see. Your handout might be more effective if you have a hard copy handout.
Sorry, it's small.
Okay.
We'll get the other one. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. So I heard, was one of the questions I was going to ask each of you is, what are you particularly proud of as a governing board? And listening to President Vella's opening, there were so many things to be really proud of. So maybe I'll ask slightly different, or very different question. What do you see as challenges in reaching those goals and adhering to mission, if any?
I think it's time management. Personal time. I mean, you know, this is the largest community college in the country, so we represent 9 colleges, and then not that we want to be districted in our board trustee roles, but we're undistricted, meaning we represent the entire, 9 campus community district, everything. So I think because all the colleges are doing so well, and there's so many things to be participating in and being involved with, it's, I think, hard to identify, which I wrote in my response in the questionnaire. I think if we had a better understanding to prioritize where we're needed the most, at least aside from the board meetings and the committee meetings, like what is the next most important place that we are at, so we can juggle our time with all of that. And then as President Vella mentioned, we do a lot of policy legislative work, which is another whole additional thing where our time is also required in these spaces and places at sometimes to represent, federal, state, and local public stuff. So it's a lot, I think, to manage on top of our day jobs, because this is a part-time gig.
Well,
Yeah.
Right. Sort of. I hear you.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I mean, I'll go. I mean, I think I wouldn't call it a challenge, but I think it is, when people have a lot of the same background and philosophy and way of thinking, like on education, in particular higher education, I can safely say that everyone here really wants, our policies to be somewhat progressive, somewhat, altruistic, we care a lot about diversity. So even though there's consensus in that, there's still, I think, different ways of thinking of the same thing, which, I think has been not, I wouldn't see it as a challenge. I actually see it as a plus, because I see different sides of what someone thinks is diversity, right? For example, that's like a big one. But just kind of getting everyone like, okay, well, since we all care about something, we all agree to it, let's go with this particular one. And make that kind of negotiation so that everyone feels represented, that their voice and their vision of that certain policy is reflected in the final policy decision we make. it's tough to get it all from like the big to the actual small, to the final, uh, it's all good intention though. That's the thing.
Oh,
Yeah, for sure.
and that's always, from an effective governance perspective, the best intention should be presumed, right? Across.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously I can't just keep, I would never violate Brown Act and like do serial calling or find out how my trustees feel. I have to be very like, respect them all and make sure that their voice is in there without, again, violating Brown Act, without seeming like I already have a bias. And that's really tough.
That, and your two comments together, you take the largesse of what your responsibilities are, the full range of $1 billion bond and 200,000 students, and the decisions that affect people in real ways. And Coca-Cola's got nothing on you with that.
Yeah.
But they don't have Brown Act. And as important as transparency is, and I know you're going to have another uh, workshop on Brown Act at some point, it's so critical to be transparent. It makes it builds trust, as we talk about with your community. At the same time, it can be difficulty to have. Hey, I'd love to have this conversation right now. We can't do it like that. We'll have to follow these steps.
Mhm.
So that can create a challenge as important as Brown Act is. Any other thoughts? Karen? No?
Oh.
Please.
I think I'd say one of the challenges that I see sometimes is prioritization of issues. Because, I think we all care about the agenda as a whole. Some items sometimes get prioritized or pushed further and faster. And I'd like to say that I'd like to see an environment where you don't have like yell and scream to be a top priority. That's sometimes what it feels like whatever the squeakiest and loudest wheel and hinge is where we tend to spend a little time, versus like you can sort of submit it and know that it's going to be in process and people embrace it as important, because that's a stylistic question. Like I shouldn't necessarily have to call it multiple times to do something. That it should just be priority. It's on our list. If it's not on our list, then we got to figure out how to justify. David was sort of insightful in his opening to let us know about we had a bunch of accomplishments, some of them not on the list. And whether it's bringing it back to the list or it's connecting you to the list, it's really important, because sometimes when we all get together here, where I think, because our power is not in the one, power in the sum here, or the majority sum, right? And that's helpful, because you want to be able to say that we're embracing it together, not just somebody sort of digging into something louder and longer and faster and more consistently. Because I think the assumption is we walk away from this table that we're on together, and this is what's going to happen. So I think it's right, and we've had this for like. I think in this group, a lot more embracing of, sort of trying to work together.
So critical. And thinking of, as I'm listening to you, thinking about what you have planned today with your goal setting and some of the options that I heard with maybe tweaking some of the goals, where you are with it. What a good opportunity to have that conversation, to set priorities. And to have your team of experts hear that as well, right? Your senior staff, you've got some amazing work. Well, thank you for sharing that. Oh, thank you. You've got working behind the scenes. So we'll talk a little bit about the basic functions. And I imagine I'll get some look, go through this list, this short list, set policy and ensure that it's enforced, ensure financial stability with the community's trustees, expectations of transparency and communication with the community, looking out for their interests, with the legal oversight role, of policy guidance and the district as a board.
Can you say a little bit more about the legal side role?
I sure will. And it also comes up a little bit later when we talk about delegation, but well, I'll just say it now so we sort of set. I'm doing this pyramid, right? Board sets policy, the board, it's the visionary. We're certainly called upon to vote on and address things that may not seem like they're part of the big vision. They're part of implementing the vision as they come back to you. So your staff then, senior management and administration is responsible for ensuring that your policies as set are implemented. And Chancellor is your CEO. He's got his team of experts that he relies on. There are additional consultants as needed. Hello. Occasionally to support and bring expertise to whatever these huge issues that you're tackling, these big questions. And so part of that responsibility is legal compliance. It actually falls within delegation to the chancellor. That's in the delegation. I'm happy to do that. Rules of professional conduct provide that there is counsel to the board. Board is an organization that operates through its expansion into senior staff and administration. The delegation is the act of delegating responsibility to the chancellor to implement. The rules of professional conduct recognize a policy, or not a policy, but attorney-client privilege that extends from the board through to management. And in that way, the protection goes to allowing a chancellor to address legal issues, bring the board legal issues, ensure compliance in the day-to-day operations with support of the expert general counsel, who serves the board, serves the chancellor in that way. So I'm not talking about supervision when I'm talking about this. I'm talking instead about your delegation of authority and how it works within the rules of professional conduct.
Quick question.
Yes.
Wouldn't it also include just us really understanding how many, when it comes to the legal department, risk, how many cases are there out there? How much are we delving out in settlement each year? Because that's a big responsibility for the board to know what legal cases do we have open, and how much are we settling each year? How much is our insurance? And I think that's something, isn't that like a big thing of what the trustees need to do
Absolutely.
in their fiduciary responsibility?
Absolutely, that is part of their responsibility. And this is not to suggest in any way, shape, or form that general counsel doesn't come to the board and speak to the board about those issues. Absolutely. But also speaks with the chancellor about those issues as superior to meet with the board or to provide reports to the board on
Okay.
the issues.
That makes sense.
And I just want to clarify that is your recommendation, Sue-Ann, because in the board policy, it doesn't delineate that, and it certainly doesn't articulate what you just said in the rules of professional conduct. So it'll be important to distinguish between your recommendation and what our policies actually say.
Okay, well, I have looked at your policies and I'm here to present on that and happy to do that. There's a difference of opinion. I'm sure we'll hear.
But again, I want to go back to, as far as we have a responsibility to make sure that we monitor what's going on in legal so that we're not, for example, you know, um, making, let's say, a negative dent on our fiscal health. We should know, overall, everything that's being settled, everything, because we get it, but we get it in closed session reports, case by case. But, recently trustee Bettis asked for a list of our pending lawsuits, which he wants to oversee, see what we have. I think that's absolutely part of the board role, but the board fiscal and fiduciary responsibility, correct?
Yes, absolutely. You
Yeah,
have,
okay.
the ultimate responsible, and I think that's a good, example of legal oversight role.
Okay.
It's not that the board is involved in the day-to-day, questions that come up with the general counsel's office and the
Oh, of course, yeah.
answers, those kinds of things. Certainly from the big picture and what you need to know to make informed decisions, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, good. That's a really good thing.
So I would speak to these are pretty basic functions. And that I imagine you're thinking, how does that even remotely our list of duties, because we have so many things that we have responsibility for. But you have more duties. Those are our functions. These are duties. There are more, and you're even going to say, "Sam, that's way more than this than two little slides of duties." The reality is they fall within buckets, so it's going to feel like a lot more responsibilities. So it's very sensitive. Be careful with that. Public input, again, Brown Act, but it's beyond that, right? It's public communications. They come to you in every way, shape, or form, I imagine. The most common I hear about the grocery store, but it's at your jobs. It's I'm sure it's everywhere you go. And email is a grand communicator. It allows for a lot of communication. So that public input is important. What you do with it is also important. The duty to receive that and then delegate it appropriately. Sure, it gets where it goes. And go ahead.
Yeah. Are we gonna do kind of what each of those entails? Is that what you're gonna do later in the presentation?
A bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll wait.
but please feel free as we're going through to ask questions.
Well, let's just flag delegate appropriately.
Yes,
Because in this district, there's a history of trustees sending emails to staff when we're approached by the public. And, I want to be very, very clear on what trustees can do without us getting in trouble.
that's right.
That's really big with us. Yeah. I know others have experience, but I think the rest of my colleagues, including myself, I would like to know a little.
We'll talk about that. And I think when I hear you say without getting into trouble, I think the more you stay in your board role,
Role now.
which sounds easier said than done, right? The less likely you are to step into an out of scope, out of your responsibility, and that's where potential liability comes in. So that's a really broad statement. And I also want to buttress that by saying lots of protections. You have immunities, you have protection over speech. When you're here, when you're speaking to public issues, but delegation is important not only to implement what you want to see happen, but also to ensure that problems are getting correctly handled and that you're not inadvertently put in a position that all best parents didn't want to be in the middle of whatever the situation might be. So we will talk more about that.
Perfect.
Monitor student success and well-being. That's clearly a priority. Just hearing the goal or the successes that you experience. You are an employer. Does that mean that you make the day-to-day decisions on employment? No, we'll talk about that. But you are an employer, and major employer. I don't even know how many,
It's under 10.
under 10. Um, so strategic planning, that's the visionary piece. You hire and evaluate your chancellor. You evaluate policy. Policy is not just the board policy that comes to you. Policy is what do we care about? What is our mission? How are we going to achieve our mission? And then you have to be knowledgeable on issues, functions, and laws. So, no problem. But we'll talk more about that because where is that line? And maybe to your point, there's time management issues. There's how can we possibly be expert in all of these things that we're expected to make decisions on? And the reality is you have the benefit of having experts to support those decisions. That's how that's worked. Adjudicator, I saw the hearing room as I walked in. So sometimes you're judges, right? You have to take a look at things and decide whether the facts and law go a particular way. That's a very different role than a legislative role that considers the whole knowledge.
Mhm.
From the big picture perspective, you have design colleges, and then maybe from particular areas or have people that are close to you physically or otherwise that have your ear on particular issues nearby, but your vision has to be for the full district. Support the decisions of the board. Great to hear about the cooperative relationships that are going on, and consensus is not a bad thing. It is an important thing, although so is. But when the decision is made, then that's the will of the board. And finances. I don't know your budget, but I know it's. Collective bargaining, that's its own area of tremendous detail and history, and there are legal components to that, but to everything that you do, but certainly in the HR arena, so much there. And then to be the education advocate for district and students. You have to prepare for this, kind of goes back to the last slide. Prepare for, attend, and vote in all things. Prepare for, you need your materials, and again, we'll talk about at what point are you prepared. You probably never feel prepared. Certainly when I've had to make some very major things, I can spend all the time in the world and still not feel that I'm fully prepared to address every in and out. That's where you have your healthy deference to your staff folks, and obviously voting everything, right? And you demonstrate a lot by voting, the importance of voting. And the only time you shouldn't be voting is if there's a conflict of some kind, or a personal conflict or the need to recuse, something like that.
I know that's always a conversation. There's law.
Yes. Appearance of impropriety, that's right.
Could you speak on,
Color to
the-
that, yeah.
of the sort of appearance piece? Because I think the appearance piece is the
Yes,
the 1090 and others, it's very clear.
that's right.
It's just when that comes to play.
That's right. So, like you say, the 1090, the Political Reform Act piece that calls for financial involvement. Right? If you have a financial interest in the particular issue. So that is, but there are a lot of issues that can come before the board where you don't have a financial interest, but you have a property well, that could technically be considered a financial, but it might, maybe not within the meaning of the financial interest. But it just wondering,
Or like like a nonprofit. that They sit on an advisory board or
And
something like
they-
that,
that's right. So that's a good example.
and you don't
yeah.
get paid, just.
Right, it's
lend
not a
your name
financial
or-
interest, you're not getting a salary, but they come before. That is something where, unless folks had that detail of what is financial, what isn't financial, and had the workshop on conflict of interest, which is the hour, then you think about how the community might respond to that. Wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. That's really, it's a gut check. Because there isn't a hard and fast rule on it. You use your discretion, you take the advice of counsel and chancellor on that issue, on the issue as it comes up. But and that can come up in difficult situations where you really want to vote, you feel the duty to vote, but then you have this other pull. In that situation, in my humble opinion and recommendation, is that you would step aside and that you would not communicate on the issue with your fellow board members, your staff, that you treat it almost, excuse me, like a 1090 where you did have a financial interest. You would not be involved at all. You could not participate in any communications. You could not. But you would you protect yourself and you inform your public and your people, right? Internally and externally, that you are making a decision, and you announce it to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And you don't have to say it quite like that, but that's the notion of it, that you wouldn't want folks to think that you've done. That there's
And I think I'd like to assess, for example, if there's financial interest versus an example of not made. It is an interest work versus like even even future of the LA group. Sometimes the perception and the announcement sound very similar versus that, a paid interest, which is material, and sometimes a passion interest, which could include sitting on a board or being active in a committee or those kinds of things. And so like I've always, I haven't had that struggle as much here, but I've seen it in other places, but just as a point of it, if it does come up here, like how, I know we can go to the attorney and it's very clear, but I think there's also some general how we do it with each other, right? And what's the expectation to know that, especially when we start getting so deep and passionate on an issue, you start scratching your head like, you're not passionate about all this other stuff here, right? How does that translate? And I think the hope is to, sort of have civility and collegiality and sort of respect for things that some of us may take more passionately than others.
that's exactly the point, that you would feel that you are able to either yourself or someone else with support and understanding.
Right.
So I want to keep us on time. We've
Yeah.
only been through 4
I
slides.
know, and we're
We
kind
have 20 more and we only have half. So
I
we really
appreciate
need to
that,
get going.
and I
But it has nothing to do with you, Trustee Bettis.
Oh, I
It
know.
was just a rocky start with the PowerPoint and all that good stuff.
that the conversation has really fit within the slides.
Great. All right, let's
So-
move forward.
So
Let's
I'm
move
sort of
forward.
moving off the slides myself.
Thank you.
so,
Yeah.
Um, let's- Culture is something that I hear you speaking to actually when you speak to that, and culture sometimes it's positive, it's negative. Some boards have written rules, they have implicit rules. It looks like from your ethics provision, you actually have culture and talk about delegation in your ethics board policy. So you do have something of a written rule around culture and delegation. Well, even on the big slide, this is really hard to read, but none of this will surprise you. Trust, teamwork, collaboration, ethics. Ethics in this case means what we're talking about, your board policy, regulations that you apply, and communication. Clear, honest, open, direct communication.
So, and I know this is gonna be but I'll admit it, I probably never read our ethics code, so we have them here at the district?
Yes.
Okay, okay,
We
I
do.
just, they're under board policy though.
They're under board
Okay.
policy. I have it, it's not a slide, but I have a copy of it and and I'll kind of talk through the piece that,
Okay, great. I knew we had board policies that related to ethics, I just didn't know if they were ethics codes, so.
I'm gonna, you have in your materials and in your conversation, the 8 characteristics of effective boards. And that's from the Center for Public Education. So implementing the structures. I will share that my partner, Greg Danis, longtime lawyer, and after 30-some years of his practice, representing boards, talking with boards across the state, he became a board member. And he wrote an article called Beyond Board 101. And from that, he taught us many lessons because I can speak to these issues in my experience working with boards. But until somebody sits in the chair of board member, there's no true understanding in that way. But what he has shared is that the essentials of good governance derive from knowing what is and is not your role, the purpose of your board meetings, and most importantly, the impact of your conduct on your colleagues as well as on your constituents. One thing we kind of laugh at, I'm not suggesting that I've ever seen this in the sport, when board members get into it in public on the, that can certainly happen, and a lot of that is just democracy in action and debate, and but sometimes it's like the parents fighting, right? People can kind of react to it. So it's not to say that in any way that you want to dampen the passion and the back and forth, but being mindful of how folks can take that in,
Mhm.
how it might reflect on the organization, just being a cohesive group, different opinions, but cohesive. So I'm going to run through board president role and responsibility fairly quickly so we can get to delegation. But as I mentioned, knowing the role of the president can really help sort of inform individual board members. I heard board member Veras speak to the issue of being one of a whole. As a single board member, that can be frustrating that you don't have more authority, that you have the authority as a whole. But in that way, you're on the same page. Now, however you got there to the state. So board president represents the trustees, is the spokesperson, speaks the will of the board to the chancellor. It's the united voice of the board. You work with the vice president and the chancellor on agendas, and you're there. You're there at the meeting where you're asked to be there. Maybe nobody else can be there. You're there. It's really critical to be in that role. You facilitate and protect the board processes. That's not just your procedures on Brown Act, et cetera. It's how you engage. It's how you ensure that folks are all being heard, that it's a the board president typically allows for the board members to have their comments and input before the board president will make comments. That doesn't have to be that way, but that's sort of one of the pillars of part of the governance. Listening to your teams, board member teams and your staff, your chancellor staff, and of course the relationship of trust and collaboration with the chancellor and the team. And board professional development, well, here we are. So check that off the board president list. You have all of that. Talk about it's pretty clear. This is just from your handbook, but we'll start to talk more about delegation and how that works. I'm hearing that a particular issue of interest. So chancellor is the administrative agent of the board of trustees and accountable for the operation of the district and providing policy recommendations to the board. That's a good summary of what. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to reiterate that for me, as you know, just being board president, I was board president in K-12 when I was on the BOE, Board of Education. And I really trusted the superintendent to provide me recommendations. I found it even more critical here at this district because there's no way anyone here, and I love my colleagues, can even surmount the amount of experience that someone who's been an administrator at a college, well, except for trustee Hoffman, probably, has had a lot of experience as an administrator at a community college, specifically. And I feel that even though we might disagree, it's really important for me to have a sounding board for someone to provide me recommendation. I'm not a know-it-all. I just feel that that's important. And I think in the past, a board of trustee wanted to remove providing policy recommendations to the board, and I stopped it because I think that is his responsibility. Can you shed light on how important it is for a chancellor to provide policy recommendations back to us? It's not just about us telling him what to do and shut up. It's about us also providing, because there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of different various ways that all sorts of things can go either right or wrong. And he's probably, you've probably been through these scenarios, in your last, 30 years of being a community college, either administrator or professor or whatever. And I'm proud to say that I don't have that, but I'm willing to learn. And to me, it takes a lot more, in my opinion, to say that, hey, I might not know, even though I am more, no offense to you, as my colleagues, we probably are his boss, and we're more probably higher on the totem pole. But that doesn't necessarily mean you just completely dismiss people that advise you. So I just really wanted to put that on how important that is.
It is important, and I'm just pick up on some of the points you made. And I think what I tried to convey earlier is that you have a team of experts that are here to support what you do. And it would be impossible to know all the things that go into making the kind of decisions that you're. So you, and where does that expertise come from? It comes from years of working in education and seeing the variety of issues that come up. In K-12, in the community college district setting, and they're not the same, but they serve, even that experience across is helpful. Just from my legal experience, which again, I am not a lawyer today, but having watched and participated in education, not as an educator, not an educator. Wish I were an educator. I admire it. But I have learned how things play out when you make certain choices. and decisions. So the fact that you have that at your fingertips, and as part of it is part of the role for sure. The benefit is tremendous.
Good to know.
Do we have your, excuse me, delegation of authority policy? It's your board policy 2430. And I'm not going to read through it with you, unless you really want me to.
Mhm.
Um, but it lays out the extent of the delegation, and really it is expansive. And that is because the work, the day-to-day work, boots on the ground is expansive. And, and without that delegated authority, it would make it even harder for the board to understand priorities and time management if you were expected to be doing the things that are appropriately delegated to the chair. Like I said, the summary and handbook is good summary. But this also, if we look at the top bullet, kind of goes to your point in terms of the role of the chancellor when it comes to policy setting. The authority includes interpretation of policy. If that interpretation has not been made in the past, that's something the chancellor would bring back to the board and inform the board. But it speaks to the role of the chancellor in not only working with the board to set policy, but to bring policy recommendations. And then, of course, the job description. There's what, 2 or 3 lines? So.
Mhm.
And the chancellor, again, has the responsibility to ensure that the laws and regulations are complied with, and present reports and reports that are requested by the board as a whole. And as your board policy provides, certainly happens where individual board members are needing a particular or interested in a particular information, and that is met where, and I can't, I'm speaking only to what policy says. I'm not entirely sure how it works on the ground, but the idea being that yes, that would be provided unless it's something that would be burdensome or disruptive in some way. And again, to the point of policy, the professional advisor to the board in policy formation. So not just in policy implementation, but the formation. Now, some districts have agreements of the trustee and chancellor. This is kind of an example of what those agreements can look like. You have your board policy 2715, which isn't called an agreement of trustees and chancellor. It's called a code of ethics and standards of practice. But under 2715, the statement of ethical values and code of ethical conduct is for each of the trustees. And I wish I had a copy to provide each of you. I only have the one that I brought for myself. So I will.
This is
This is
a
just
recommended
sample.
sample that your
This
firm
is just a
has.
sample, and this is part of, when we do this training, we talk about the options for putting together an agreement. But then in studying your LA Community College District documents and policies, this is your form of agreement. And you'll see why when you look here, this is how we're going to, trustees will engage with the chancellor. Pardon me. Of course. Yes.
That
That is helpful to me, and they, um, yes, the board policies are formed from many. I have worked with districts that have, and I'm thinking more K-12, and certainly community college districts that tend have more specific to this arrangement, that have a different kind, they have a bylaw that it doesn't go into the kind of detail. So I'm just saying that you don't need to. Oh, no, of course not.
When they change offices. The code of ethics, part of just keep in mind
Okay.
of what the. Don't forget.
So Dr. Benjamin, yeah, okay. No, first of all, it's really great information, and I'm assuming that this is something that the league probably has their policy recommendations on, right? From the California Community College League. Okay, perfect. That's
And
great.
it's such an excellent idea to have that be exactly. And when you have your retreat, it's a great time to spend a little time on it together with some of your other ground rules that you explained earlier. Were excellent and part of trust and communication.
So, and can I ask you just can I ask for your opinion? And
I'll see if
I'm gonna offer my opinion a little bit, because as I read this, the sort of more common language talk, kind of clear, versus ours are a little bit more, lofty, ivory tower like. And from I mean, I think you can take from in a few different directions, but what do you see more? Stuff that looks like this, plain talk, and I'm assuming that's why you listed up as suggestions, or things that are like ours, which are left to a lot of interpretation, and shorter sometimes, but they're like one sentence means 1,000 things, right?
Yeah.
So
I did look at yours with an eye to that, because it is under an ethics code and not under anything to do with the chancellor relationship or chancellor delegation. So it doesn't necessarily stand out as, oh, this is what our commitments are. But I thought they were, at least this portion of the board policy was clear to me. And really it matters what you all think is clear. So I can't give an opinion on but let's go through it, and then you can see
Yeah.
what you folks think.
and I'll say this, and I think maybe just Andrew and I, was it going through a censure issue with you? One time that I think I had to read backward and forward because of censure conversation.
Right.
Remember.
And
And
I'm
immensely complicated, immensely difficult, and I think we had 3 or 4 different reads of some behavior issues and some space there. But I think from that, I think we were just, most of the board at the time was happy to just have it go
be
away
done
in some
with
way,
that and forget
which
about
didn't
it for-
necessarily solve any of the questions that we might have lingered and might have been sort of the tenets of why it was hard to reach consensus. But that censure piece is also really not common, really problematic, and sometimes every once in a while you're like, did they get to the edge or did they cross the line, right?
Well, that's right. And I'm only focusing on the trustee commitments and not the sort of sanctions process and what that looks like. And I don't know how much of the study of that was on what the process is when it's triggered. But to your point, if you think it can be simplified or become a one-page boardsmanship kind of document, there's nothing wrong with borrowing from your ethics and using different language that might be more comfortable and have that be a standalone document. It wouldn't be it would be part of your reflection of your board policy, but it would not be part of the board policy in terms of enforcing. Correct. That's no more law. Um, um, okay, so the statement of ethical values and code of ethical conduct, some of you have studied it. Maybe it's been a while, because when there is a problem like that, it's exactly as you say. Okay, that was terrible. Let's, put that aside and move forward and not think about these until maybe we have to again. But when we're thinking about this issue, delegation and how you engage with the chancellor and agreements with the trustees and chancellor, this is a great place to look for where you've already got a foundation. So in the performance of their governance responsibilities and its commitment to educational quality, individual members of the Board of Trustees shall adhere to the following values and code of ethics. As a trustee, I recognize that governing authority rests with the entire board, not with me as an individual, and will exercise authority only as a board. I will give appropriate support to all policies and actions taken by the board at official meetings. So that's something we've heard about already today. Second is, I recognize that the chancellor is the trustee's sole employee. I pledge to work with chancellor in gathering any information from staff directly that is not contained in the public record. And what's contained in the public record? A lot, right? I was able to get on Google and find all kinds of information about the organization. I will consider all relevant facts and perspectives in the. Now, I'm going to stop on that just for a second. We have to do that. When do you have the relevant facts and perspectives? I'm going to sound like a reporting. You have information that's been pulled together by your team of experts in whatever the particular area is. Resources, whether it's construction, I mean, just a variety of things. They pull their best thinking together and bring that to you. You review that, the role as a board, and you're certainly going to have questions. But when is it enough, right? Do I need, well, I should look at those 4 contracts and see what they say. I'm particularly interested. Sometimes that's appropriate to look at what you want to see, ask for more detail behind that, for sure. But there's also what we refer to as a healthy deference. It's not a blind, following of whatever the recommendation might be, but it's a studied study of the information, trust that that what's been provided is appropriate and as complete, but then ask your questions when you have them and ask follow-up. But that's kind of a little bit of guidance on that, which could be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Everybody has their own level of comfort that they have enough information, right? I will participate in the development of policy and the approval of strategy for the district and respect the delegation of authority to the chancellor and president of the district institution. I will avoid involvement in day-to-day operations. I will maintain confidentiality about issues discussed in closed session. I will act only in the best interest of the entire community. I will ensure public input in board deliberations, adhering to the law and spirit of the open meetings laws and regulations. Talk about the importance of transparency. I will prevent conflicts of interest and the perception of conflicts of interest. I will use appropriate channels of communication. I will respect others and act with civility. I will work to be appropriately informed about the district's educational issues and responsibilities of trusteeship and devote adequate time to board work. That's not all your time, which you could easily take, but it's adequate time to be informed. And then you also have, I will maintain the confidentiality of closed session a second time. So that one's really important. So that's sort of what you have as a set of agreements. Again, that's 2715, and a great place to review when you're wondering. I mean, I'm not going to tell you, you should be looking at your board policies, but there are some to find that you're struggling in a particular area. Which of our board policies help inform me on how we can address this as a team? Any questions about that? We're just finishing up. Summary of boardsmanship. Again, you can create your own that incorporates agreements, but this is just sort of what we've been talking about. How you make your decisions is as important as the decisions you make. Matters. That across, you know, it's demeanor, engagement, it's questions, it's the confidence that you share in your team, the chancellor as well. From my,
Let's get
yes,
back to the last slide. Say a little bit more about the last bullet point. It says trustees are always trustees for the district. In the community and public events not associated with activities, formal activities connected to the district. So is there any liability associated with that?
the purpose of the point is not oh my goodness, you're going to be out doing things, and you're always going to be uh, potentially on the hook for something, even when you're in your free time. The intent is to be thinking about the perception. Perception is critical. And so when you're in the community and you're doing your role and your demeanor and your confidence and encouragement of the acts and of the district and the folks that run the district, that tremendous positive effect, not only for the organization and the bolstering of the confidence, internal confidence, but your community feels that as well. And that's what's intended. And the liabilities piece, I will say again, we have a lot of protections, but the more you tread into what has been delegated, then you tend to move into an area where what we call the course and scope. You've heard it. What's in the course and scope? There is a government code 825 that provides for defense for board members or staff if you're included in a lawsuit for something related to your work in the district. And so long as you're within your role as a board member, you're also protected from judgments. The only time that a judgment, when a judgment wouldn't be covered if it was determined outside course and scope and managed something malicious. So that is an extensive conversation. So I would just put a caveat on that, that there would be more to that. But just to give you a sense that there are protections, certainly you should feel empowered to do important work you do. Just close out my colleague, my dear colleague. Board members subtly but surely model behavior that represents values of the district, such as respect, even for those specifically, courtesy, with those who do not necessarily reciprocate, and like demeanor regardless of the subject matter, overriding each of the decision. I find that to be very powerful comment from his view. That concludes our book.
Thank you. So why don't we go ahead? We do have, till 10:15, so I'd like to, allow the board to have reactions.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Would you
great.
like me to
we do have to talk.
change?
Yeah. No, no, it's okay. I'll just go
Well, I
around.
can sit-
No, no, you're
Okay,
fine with that.
okay.
Yeah. So why don't we start over here with, trustee Bettis? Any reactions, final thoughts? I know, um,
Um, I would say, I think it's actually good that we have this kind of conversation. Sometimes we do a retreat, talk about some of the rules that we are kind of supposed to follow, and we get deep into the issues right away. So I appreciate the moment to think about it. I think maybe we like a statement beyond the code of ethics, because I think sometimes, like I said, the time that I forced myself to read it was in the middle of sort of an issue. And so I think, but generally speaking, if it's a document, the language that's there, I think we should follow up with that and add that to our trustee training. And maybe it's one of these annual things as we rotate officers, that comes up again, and just a refresh, or whether it's there or in our board retreat or in our, chancellor's eval or something like that, because most of the points have to do with the relationship there. But it'd be nice to sort of, make it a regular part of just the reminder of some of the core values.
Vice President,
Generally, this is really helpful, and I think it's nice. Some of us do go to the CCLC conferences where we hear these things, but we don't get to be in a room together to kind of hear them. However, we hear them maybe a little bit differently each person, but I think it's nice for us to be able to be here together and contribute. Also because we have folks that have been veteran status very involved, and then newer folks, and so I think just that to be reminded of our own board ethics. And then it read fine, and but it's from 2015, so maybe it's definitely something that we want to revisit. And it's wonderful to have trustee Cordova here as well as the student trustee, because I think it also helps us bring better cohesion as we move forward.
good point. Trustee Henderson, Vice President Henderson.
Spelling down. Carrying out. Turnover.
Okay. Trustee Cordova.
I just wanted to say that I think the last thing that you said before the slide about how like we conduct ourselves, and something about myself, like now that I've had this position, like anywhere I go, I always have my school in mind, and like now I don't even want to have conversation of like they're rewarding what I'm doing. So I think that's, while like you said, we might have some liability, we always have, we want to do our thing on the side, but just to, like you said, like just have that inspiring thing, like we are doing something good, so always need to have that be a part of our demeanor. So I think that was great. So thank
Trustee Hoffman.
First of all, thank you. I think this is an excellent presentation. I feel like you're always rushed because this literally could last probably hours. And I also feel like the most important piece of the presentation we just completely glossed over, which is when we let your slides on developing a high performing governance culture, and then do that. The 8 characteristics of effective boards, and then the characteristics of ineffective trustees. I feel like those is something that from in having like a comprehensive training. So I would love to bring this back. I would love to have full participation. I don't know what the reason for not having full participation here today. But I think that would be really important. So I feel like this was a really good introduction of the comprehensive governance training act. Before. Thank you.
Briefly
Yeah, oh,
to
yeah.
that, it is typically about a 3-hour training and more participatory, but those are important slides.
So Chancellor, could we maybe have her come back?
Yes,
Or
we'll discuss
President.
the subject matter and.
Thanks.
So I just want to give my closing comments. You know, it is about truly being prepared. I've never self-admittedly just I'm not that person. I used to be that person where I would prepare, especially in my college years, grad school. Then something happened where, from there, so like, my mind became, I don't know what happened to it. Right. Yeah. But the reason, is because, you literally remove about 95% of the anxiety and perhaps disagreements you might have with your colleagues running into a board. Because you actually then realize, oh shoot, there is actually what I needed is in here. But so that was a great point. I wholeheartedly agree with Trustee Hoffman. This board, because it's a very tough place to be, because we have to be tough, but at the same time caring. And then we have to lead the country, um, but then we don't have time to look internal because we're so rushed. Because we have, like, Vice President always lets us know, and that we have our day job, and that's really tough. And I can guarantee you that between each board meeting, we have at least 100 hours of reading if you really wanted to read it right. I'm talking, grad school type of reading, right? So at the end of the day, I agree with Trustee Hoffman that we really need to focus on those things of boardmanship, agreements between the trustees and the chancellor, the ones that Trustee Hoffman mentioned, and really delve into it in a way where we have all of the trustees here, we have their trust, and by the way, I think open-mindedness coming in, not coming in closed, because you know, that's really at the end of the day the magic, where you know, and I can only speak for myself, but um I tend to be very open about all sorts of things, but in particular the fact that I don't necessarily know everything about, governing, right? So I think, I wanna, kind of put this in a kind of to-do list of reintroducing again some of these subjects to really really delve into it and put our heart and soul into it, because revisiting board policy 2517 like is important, and having that real talk about it, and by the way, the reason I mention it is because I see all New York board members come and bring new perspective too, which is like, oh my God, that'd be great to really look at their, how they would react to such things. Um, so I do think that overall, um, you know, the meat of it today, at least we know where we need to look at further as a board to really like, and trust my colleagues that, when I'm no longer board president, they can actually put that back again, and I think, take this presentation, some of the highlights, and condense it into something we can really work, and create. And I want to first of all thank you, uh, Trustee Cordova, because you know we have, you know statewide efforts into more inclusion from the student trustee, and I think that's something that we need to include in our board policy, by the way. And we'll work together, and Trustee Hoffman has brought a lot of resources on that. So it's time we revisit our board policies to include our student trustee, because when you I want to say, and Trustee Callahan was also very in tune with how, his role, and you are a trustee and you have to have that role too. So in all, I think it is a very great, opportunity. And I do want to mention, I know we can, have disagreements, and to me, I'm fine with the disagreement, but there was something in your presentation that isn't about law or board policy, but it simply said respect. It simply said, and I think to me, like, it's really important because I'm not necessarily like, especially someone like me, and I feel that I'm not saying it's just about me, but I can only speak to myself. When I became board president, I really tried really hard to get everybody's opinion in one major opinion, but and that never worked. Like I realized really quick. But at least I'm trying to call it, or be in front of them to ask, hey, what'd you think? What'd you think? And that's been something that, I think we can really work on as a team. Because at the end, the irony, having been on a board where there was actual like disagreement philosophically about what we should do about student housing, what should we do about, when the pandemic hit, should we give students financial aid, our own money? We have real differences in thought. And now it's the opposite. We have every trustee who wants to help and wants to give our students, textbooks and aid and food and all that. So at the end of the day, it's like, how do we get there as, you know, um, as a board? And then the second thing is the chancellor, um, you know, being quote unquote our only employee, which really, that board policy needs to, and no offense to our chancellor, but it's not so much about, I think what it needs to say is that we need a structure to go and work with the chancellor as a board. I don't think it's like telling us he's literally your only employee, because as we mentioned, we employ a lot of people. But yeah, to work for the entertainment project. So anyway, it's 10:15. I'll leave it. Those are my closing remarks. Thank you so much for your presentation. I appreciate you coming here today.
Thank you so much
And
for having me.
thank you. And then I'll hand it over back to Dr. Benjamin. Oh, we have a 15-minute break. Okay.
Right.
Yes, please. If you guys could come back by 10:30. Thank you. Yeah. start. Thank you, Dr. Benjamin, for reminding us, but putting us on the right track.
But I can take a chance with you guys.
You can't. You can't. I can't go over. I have a work call. So right at noon, I can. They'll be done. Yeah, but I'm just letting you know. I can't. Take the meeting. Hey, Jeanette, how are you? And hi, Jeanette, how are you?
That's all I got to say.
How's your been?
Not all.
Between you and Jeanette, get it all.
Oh, what happened? Oh, you can't bring it. Oh, because she wasn't here. She didn't see me. It is a rule, but when she turns on, to fight it. No, no. That's, we were just going through our ethics. Okay, Dr. Benjamin.
Yes.
Okay,
How you doing?
for trustee, trustee Hoffman. Are they coming? Trustee Hoffman, can you look up for them?
They're coming.
Okay.
They're here.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
You can count them. They're in the room.
We're back in session.
Okay. So I'll start where I left off earlier. So now we're going to walk through the evaluation, the survey rather, and have a little discussion because only 3 of you completed the survey. I'm not trying to emphasize that. I'm just stating that as a fact.
That's fine.
Okay. So the first goal you have for this year, and remember we did these in January and then we went through and put in actions and then they can be a regular board meeting and you made some more changes and approved them. So first one has to do with overseeing district college efforts to increase student performance. And of course that's important. And what you said, you only had one action you wanted to take regarding this goal. And that was to receive and discuss reports twice a year on performance metrics, including but not limited to all those key things listed there. And then you had 3 options. You could choose whether progress was made on the action or not, and then decide separately, do you want to retain that particular action for the rest of the year? Do you want to reconsider it, maybe reword it or whatever? So the 3 people who participated said, 2 of them said that progress was made, and all 3 said they want to keep. How do the rest of you feel about that one? It's
Approved.
important. You need the data, and I am assuming that you have seen the data since between now and January. I know you have. Yes.
We've seen it.
Trustee Hoffman.
Have we seen the data on transfer? I don't know that I've seen the data.
Well, if I may. Dr. Abel Lopez is here to help out in response. We have a couple ways that we do this. One is this is a regular occurrence within IESS, and that information is made available through the portal to everyone. Secondly, we have dashboards that we have that are active, that we can literally punch it in, and that information is in real time. It's thinking it's the day before. So Dr. Lopez, help me reframe this a little bit.
You're correct, Chancellor. We have our active dashboards. They're essentially almost a year behind, given that wait for some of the reported data, but for the most part, we have regular enrollment data.
We have our disaggregated data. And then at IESS, we also have our presentations from our various plans, like our student equity that go into disproportionate impact. So IESS, in regard to the minutes and agendas, probably has the most relevant and up-to-date information.
But I would agree, Trustee Hoffman, the emphasis on a monthly basis during my chancellor's monthly report is on enrollment. That's what been the emphases and whatnot. And then the trustees receive the daily enrollment reports as well. That gives an update on performance, enrollment, headcount, and efficiency, if you will, from at various points of milestones. So we do emphasize the enrollment area more, but the other equity report card activities that are, I think, embedded within some of these activities are presented at ISS. So we could give it more light, if you will. The board president would like that to disseminate it, provide links, but the information is readily available.
I don't need like a lengthy report with links, but I would love if at least once a year, the full board, and maybe it's during committee of the whole, at least got a presentation on degree and certificate attainment, transfer. And I know sometimes those numbers are in arrears and really hard to get, but as best as we can, ADT attainment, dual enrollment. I think those numbers for me anyway, would be very helpful. I'm often asked to speak, and you know this, around the state now, especially on dual enrollment. And I would like to be able to know where we are in LACCD. And I think some of us are not on IESS and don't have time to comb through all the information, even though I recognize that it's there. So I would love an easy to hear, easy to interpret report to the full board.
Okay. Thank you. So let's go to number 2. So the follow-up there, you want to keep this as an action, and then of course, get some more of the detailed information on student success and progress. Now, the second role we have here is oversee district and college efforts to provide basic needs for all students. And the action was that you would receive reports to better understand needs and support for student parents. You remember the discussion we had around that in January? I can't remember who trustee it was, but really had students as parents, right? So 3 people, 1 said that there was progress, 2 said not much progress was made on this, but all 3 want to keep it. How do the rest of you feel? Do you agree that there was not progress made on this?
Probably more bigger discussion than actual tangible progress, but there's been a lot of good stuff in between. And so I'll say this, I know I got a chance to visit the emergency housing providers there, and like okay, this looks like a lot of progress when you physically see it, but I think there's certain areas I think leaving it there, because we still have from progress we've made to where we want to be.
Okay.
A gap to go.
Yeah, and we need to talk about, or you need to talk about how you're gonna get all these reports. There's a lot here. A couple of you see this comment kind of recur here about this is a lot. This is too much. And so how do you keep track of all these things you want to do, and hold yourselves accountable to getting the information and even remembering that you've got these reports?
So I'm gonna just really briefly, I think that first of all, I'm in agreement with this, but there has been progress made on basic needs. I think the student parents component hasn't had a lot of attention.
Okay,
That's different.
that's
It's a 1.2 and then B.
Yes.
1.2B. Okay. So I would like, from this, if you're all okay with the trustees to actually put some focus, since we have staff here, on 1.2B, which is receive reports to better understand needs and support for student parents. I want to say that, and in discussion for all of us here, part of the reason why, and trustee Bettis, I think you and I had a little bit of a disagreement in like how sometimes FinPOC should or shouldn't receive some district-wide projects. But the reason I do request that the committees have some reports presented to them first than us is because it would be really hard to provide reports on the board meetings because of how lengthy they've been this year.
Mhm.
And just it's been really busy this year
Yes.
compared to other years. And also because that way, some of the trustees that don't have the time to read reports, um, could potentially go on board docs and, you know, look at the agenda for our committees and potentially download whatever reports and read them, on what each committees are saying, because everything's on board docs.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that's what we should do, trustees. I'm just saying that's an option for us to kind of, because we are receiving a lot of reports. And by the way, you know, more memos and memos are multiplying, but we can, if we don't have the time to download our memos or look at the memos, then we can also make some of these presentations. Like, I don't know if student parents is going to IESS or that's somewhere where it can be discussed. So I would like for us to use our committees more. Again, that is not my prerogative. That's the chairs of each committee. So, but that would
Well,
help.
the thing about these
Yeah.
is that these are the board's goals.
Yeah, please.
And so there's gotta be a way for it to come back here anyway,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
these are your public goals
Yeah.
that you said.
If I might offer, and again, offer any member of the team to weigh in. I want to distinguish between reports and then the support for student parents. The latter is absolutely occurring. Almost a third of our students are student parents.
Right.
All CalWorks, student parents. EOPS, good section of the EOPS,
Mhm.
massive programs of the 9 colleges that provide tremendous support. We've not withdrawn any support, our student parents. The extra resources that we're providing to LGBTQ, OJA, Dream Resource Center, some of them are student parents. We have a well-established family resource center at Valley and new dollars at LA Southwest College, the federal earmark from Congresswoman Waters. So I want to distinguish between the report and then the service for.
But I want to say, and respectfully that I think part of what the board, if a tree falls and no one's there to hear it, did it really fall? And it's an obvious thing that we support student parents. The problem is that you're talking to a board that is handling over 150 policy issues at every given time. I mean, I went to visit a groundbreaking reseller. Steve and I went somewhere for, facilities. I don't know what it was, a boot camp. And someone came up to us and said, "Oh, you know about this, right?" And we're like, and I didn't want to insult the person, but I'm like, this is one out of 2,000 things that we know about or should know about. So I think what we can better focus on, and with all due respect, is for us to have communication on student parents. So putting together what because it's all in your head,
Yeah.
and having your staff put a report together for our board on what we're doing to really support student parents. But I am very confident that we are, and you're absolutely right, Chancellor. We have done a lot. But we still, need that line item, kind of that list of what we
Specific
do to
thing, yeah.
support. Yeah.
And I'm just gonna continue to beat the dead horse because I want to ask you, I think you're the one who brought it up, trustee Hoffman, the conversation quickly.
I mean, I think it's less about the reports and more about, is this board committed to support parenting students as a goal? Not just about, we have CalWorks, every college has CalWorks, every college has EOPS, but what are we doing as a district to make sure that parenting students have resources to go to school, the classes are scheduled in such a way that they're able to participate, that the AI, whatever we're using to proctor exams, isn't so onerous that a child can't be in the same room as a parent when they're taking their finals. What are we doing for pregnant and students who are nursing? There's a whole lot other than let's just get a report on student parents because they're in CalWorks or because they're in EOPS. I would like to see, and I've been saying it since I've been on this board, a commitment from this board to supporting student parents. If it's not this year, I'm fine to do it next year. But I really feel like we need to really step up because we're gonna serve the 6 million plus adults that are undereducated, no college credential, and make sure that they're able to go into the workforce. Most of those are parents. So what are we doing as a district to make sure that they feel welcome and comfortable at our call?
And
That's
so-
more the issue.
Okay, yes, please.
Um, since the vast majority of our students, vast majority, but a very significant portion of our students are parents already, how are you assessing that colleges are not supporting parents? And I'm speaking from a kid whose parents went at the same time as
I'm not saying that
during
we're
my
not.
childhood, but I'm just trying to understand it because I think there's a model that like I think the district has used several times, like the Valley Family Center. But I think the question is, because we're saying we're not doing it, I actually think there's a lot of cooperation. I think there's a lot of programs and there's a lot of county and state support in the programs. But if you wanted to say the standard is family center everywhere concept, okay, that's one thing. We sort of did an endeavor years back with childcare center everywhere, and it misses in a lot of areas. It's a problematic space in a lot of areas, but it just ultimately becomes a full-fledged subsidy we do. If that's going to be a full-fledged conversation about what kind of model we should be thinking about, I think it's a valuable conversation point. But I think I want to move us away from that we don't do it.
I didn't.
Do a lot.
I don't think I said that we didn't do it. Did you hear that I said that we?
No,
didn't
I
do
don't
anything?
think she said we're
We
doing
don't do
anything.
enough.
I just want to like,
I mean, I
Let's
want
just-
to be clear with the language
right.
because
Well, let's just create awareness for one, and we can talk as a board.
Yeah.
But do our conversations trickle down to how classes are scheduled, how students are being supported? I've heard stories about faculty just telling students, "We'll just drop the class because you can't accommodate for, whatever reason. If your, child is sick, or no, you can't bring your kid to class, or proctorio, or whatever that system is when you're taking an exam. If they notice another person in the room, you fail the exam. But there are lots of other
Okay. Well, those
things
are different
in terms
standards.
of serving students. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
And I do want to make sure that we have the resources. Yes, we have a family resource center at LA Valley College. I don't know what happened to the one at LA Southwest College.
Developing.
Okay. So I just want it on our
What-
radar, and I want
so-
us as a board to make a commitment.
Then can I offer sort of a little bit of clarity? Because a lot of the conversation we've been having is basic student needs. What you're talking about, examples you gave of what we're not doing is not necessarily basic needs. This isn't like food, shelter, kind of, emergency bridge loans and all that stuff, which I think a lot of us have. And you're talking about sort of other intangible pieces and a lot of the discretionary stuff that we've left to what happens inside a classroom. If our faculty is not supporting, our staff is not supporting student parents, then maybe there's a statement of behavior, a statement of, sort of something else that's not completely basic student needs, but there is just
So-
it's the way you're essentially treating a sensitive student population.
What's in a
So
element of
we
awareness?
got like
I know.
20,
I'm just
29
saying-
more of these to go.
Yeah, I
But
don't
let
wanna-
me just make this suggestion. The chancellor has heard you, I think, and what it is you want. So why don't we just let that, and
Fine with
he can actualize it and whatever way it needs to happen. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is when we come back in January and look at these, you can end these, but you can also continue them in the next year. So because something like this, I think the way you're describing it, if the whole board would agree that that's what you want to do, would take a lot. I mean, it's almost a cultural shift in some way.
Right. But our
Depending
district
on how
foundation-
difficult it would be. So,
The district foundation has made like really great inroads on supporting student parents.
mhm. So there's
coming up.
stuff
So
already there.
There is
Mhm,
stuff.
in
I just
place.
want a commitment from this board. It's something we want to.
It's on the list, you approved it, so it sounds like it is.
Yes, my answer is yes, and I want to honor the retainment issue right there
Okay,
of
got
100%.
it. All right, so let's see.
Absolutely.
Strengthen board capacity to set policy goals to advance DEIA goals and efforts. So plan study sessions and discussions on current issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. That's the action you want. You said you were gonna do study sessions, but you got a whole year. So was progress made on this? One person says yes, two persons said no, but they want to retain it. How do you feel on that one? Did you have a study session around DEI yet?
No, well, okay, let me remember. Didn't we do a committee of the whole? DEIA?
I don't recall that.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
It-
it's been, but there are, again, it's the activities occurring on our campuses around this issue in plentiful form. But that's not the point here.
Chancellor,
It's a
but
board
without due
session.
respect,
This is a
we
board session.
really don't want to take, we know, I think you're defending the district, which is great. I love my district, but the idea is more, did we do that? So, yeah,
Did
so,
you
so
have
why
it?
don't we?
No, but have you had it
Yeah,
yet?
let's do
Because
that.
there's still time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So can we agree with that? And then action item from this, if trustees are okay, is we're gonna have a study session at the board meeting, next one, or the next one for DIA. Right now, we don't have anything for October or November on committee of the whole or anything like that. So let's, is the board okay with that?
Can I make a suggestion? Some of these goals, could they be met in other ways? For instance, there's a DEIA conference coming up. It's already sold out in September. Let's just say our whole board would have attended. Does that kind of can we
That is
satisfy?
not
some
what
of
you
these?
said you were
Okay.
going to do. You said we're going to plan a study session and discussions on current issues of DEI. I'm assuming that you guys will be in the discussion. Now, that's what it says. If you want to reconsider that, change it to attend a conference or training or something on it, then let's do that. But what you have there is something else, yes. So do you want to keep that one or,
I'm a yes.
so you have the rest of the year to do it?
And the chancellor just wrote it down as an. Okay.
1.4. Stay abreast of district and college progress on complying legislation specific to community colleges. A, review reports on college compliance with AB 928, the Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act of 2021, AB 1705, Seymour Campbell Student Success Act of 2012, matriculation assessment. Progress was not made, it said. Did not review these reports.
So,
I don't know the answer to that. So did that happen yet?
so Dr. Benjamin, is it fair to say that, and I don't know, because I'm just trying to figure this out here, but, that even though there has been no action or no progress, there's still the same amount of people that want to retain it? Can we go by that recommendation? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm asking what you want to do
Okay.
as a whole now that we're looking at it. And as somebody said, there's a lot up here. And at the same time, there's a lot that's being done in the district. It's
Okay.
not here. So you've got to balance it because you could just work the staff to trying to get all this stuff done.
Okay, so let me just, and trustee knows if I'm overriding your committee. So I know about this because I'm aware of the public affairs agenda. However, I'm not discussing how these laws have yet affected the district in what they're intended to do. So like 1705, for example, is a big one where people want to know whether or not this has been affecting positive or negative.
Right.
So I assume that that's a kind of separate thing because 1.4 says stay abreast of district and college progress on complying legislation specific to community colleges.
Mhm.
So that is definitely our public affairs committee. Correct?
And well, actually, this, about 2 months ago in this room, at E3 in ISS, we went to AB 17057 with the full team, but that was at IES.
So,
uh,
so I'm
Vice
asking the
President
board,
decide.
can that count, that it was discussed in a committee? That's been my big question to you guys. I mean, it's just so many things. How can we bring it all back to the full board? I guess
Well,
that's my.
this is helping you determine how you're going to do
I
this
like
next
committees
year.
because I'm like, y'all can discuss it there and just make sure that the chair lets me know as president and I'm good. But if you guys want to bring everything back to the full board, that's a lot.
I do want to say, and I think the, we made note of the conversation we had with them. Some of the committees actually have charges. And
Mhm.
it's difficult to go around the charges of the committee. I mean, you can sometimes make findings because some general language. But if we wanted to do a little bit more of the vet in the committee before it goes, we may need to take a look at the specific charges because, example, I think in FIMPOC, the only thing that comes to us is projects over $5 million. That's a charge specifically in the language, right? That's there. So if we wanted to do more in cases, like I think we had a lease agreement at $5 million. So it didn't land in the committee work. But there are language we can do, but I think each of the committees has that kind of sort of, here's what it is. If we want to grow it and have the committee be a more sort of working in certain areas, then we may need to look at the charge and we also may look at how much time we're actually spending
So
in committees
what
because
I'm
we're all
thinking-
rushing to finish our meetings in an hour and 15 minutes, right?
And what you could do is maybe go through these and determine which ones would go to committee and which ones would be for the entire board. Separate them that way. That's a thought.
Well, I'm good with keeping this if you guys want to keep it. Yeah.
As long as we review the committees, I think if we can compartmentalize it to make it easier for us to know that it's being taken care of, then not necessary, but I also don't want later on someone to be like, no one told me. I didn't get to discuss this. I didn't see it. So
In the meeting, in the full board meeting. Something make.
Yeah.
Yes, it could just be a high level report, bullets.
If I may add, that is done, certainly change that. At each meeting, board committee chairs report out on the work of what the agenda was, is what we discussed. And at that moment, the other board members could say, I'd like more information on that. Please forward us the report, and we're happy to do that. So just maybe connecting some of these dots together, we try to schedule in such a way that at every meeting, we do report out. So this in fact was done at ISS, and it took, a good chunk of the time because it's so
Mhm.
important.
Mhm.
It was such a big
And,
process.
and it was done at Public Affairs Committee. And I've, and student Vice President, I'm sorry. Vice President, is really good in her report. It's really long, but it is and good. And I find out so much from your report. So I'd like to say that let's retain it if you guys are okay with it. And then just continue the reporting out on this, because this is specific to legislation,
Yes.
Dr. Benjamin.
Yes, yes.
I'm happy with the work of our Vice President.
All right. And so this next one, review reports. Oh, sorry about that. All right. Encourage and support the annual commencement exercises as a premier student experience, culinary experience. Prioritize ways, what you said, to support the graduation experience and funding in addition to being in attendance. Now, all three people said progress was made on that. And that you should retain it to say, and one says reconsider.
It was done.
I was hoping you were hoping.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that'd be great.
I
Oh,
was,
we got one.
Let's remove what's going on.
well, I mean, I think, again, um, the, the graduation experiences, I think they were phenomenal to have this kind of recognition and support. I think, I did get to have fairly decent hand in the PETA one. And I think that's where the considered kind of made me feel like just to reconsider a little bit of, about maybe the experience and the funding. Well, and then Trustee Veras and I had conversations about this a little bit too. Just from a celebratory standpoint, I think it's great, but from an effective, I mean, I guess for the APITA one, it's interesting because like Mi Gente and the Black Grad, they're also rooted in student programming, right? So there's Puente, Umoja, right, AAOI, that has these cohorts of students that have a sense of community. And then for APITA, there's not that. There's at Harbor, you have APAS, right? But that's the only student community group within the 9 campuses. And so I think from a celebratory standpoint at the end, these folks don't necessarily have that ethnic identity to go along or cohort mentality to then go to participate in the celebratory situation. So our turnout was really challenging. And so I think from a funding standpoint, if we were going to invest, um, at least in that population, I would like to see actual, student programming where they can build that identity and support. Not prior to, I mean, still having a celebration is great, but I think our ability to attract students for that, I would have rather given them the money for scholarship or, put it back into programming to build that out. So that's where I had reconsidered, not because I wanted to cancel the celebration, but just from a reflecting, there's still a lot of components we need to incorporate in campus culture.
So if I may, you were reading in the annual commencement exercises to be special grad.
Mhm.
That was
That's an interesting point.
Well, I think retain 2-1, so let's retain it. Yeah, right? And it's the majority, okay.
So here are the comments on that one. On goal 1, which had to do with student success. I don't remember having any discussions or receiving any presentations or updates on much of these goals. We have not made any progress on receiving reports about student parents. We talked about that. We have not received transfer completion numbers or reports with ADT completion that I'm aware of. I'm sure they exist and maybe are reported in committees, but we have not had a COW meeting. COW is committee of the whole where we could get updated information. This has been lacking. And then the second comment, increase enrollment and retention rates. So we've discussed all that in the process. So we go to goal 2. First one, provide direction to the chancellor on fiscal activities that promote efficiencies. So the first thing you wanted to do on that, your first action, work closely with the chancellor and general counsel in reviewing the district's exposure and liability status. So one person said you've made progress. 2 said progress was not made. 2 said keep it. And 1 said eliminate it. I forgot I'd put that as a choice too, and along with reconsider. So you see the results there. Let's discuss.
What was the context of 2.1? I'm
This is
sorry,
around fiscal affairs.
but to provide direction.
And this one had to do, we had a discussion in January around district liabilities.
Oh,
And
Dr. Bennett,
Yes.
Let me read. Yes, fiscal health. General goal is the board is committed to demonstrating sound judgment in the use of the district's current and potential fiscal resources and provide for the long-term fiscal health of the district. So that's the general overarching goal, and this was 2.1. You have 2 goals underneath this. And then some specific action.
yeah, so specifically under fiscal affairs, liabilities was one issue. And the other one is just the general physical well-being. So this one is on liabilities. Work closely in reviewing the district's exposure and liability status.
so I think that is currently being reviewed by the chancellor at a request of one of the trustees. So I do want to say that there was a request submitted to the chancellor and myself regarding district's exposures and liability for the board. So it's not done. So I'm okay with retaining it because it's still being in progress.
All right, other comments? We'll keep that one. And then this, let's see. And then it goes to 2.2. I did a bad job of transposing these. So let's go to 2.2, participate in activities that support the financial well-being of the district. And the first thing you said you wanted was to advocate at the state level for a revised funding formula that will support students in California community colleges.
We did that and we did it really well. I mean,
Oh,
we
that's
got more
great.
money than we thought, yeah.
Okay.
I
And so,
I would love, I mean, I don't know. I'm happy, but there's a retain of 2, the majority rule.
well, but that's 3 people. We can
No, but I wanna
we keep
respect the people. Right, right.
you remove the things that you say have become institutionalized. Just a you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens naturally. And you don't need it there if you're doing it. And if you know you're doing it, start lacking, you might want another year, you might want to put it back.
I think this one's still good though, because our funding formula is potentially changing. So I think to keep it right on the forefront is important.
Well, you're right. I mean, in 1 year?
24, 25.
24, 25. Okay.
That's
And
okay.
also there's a retain of 2, so,
Okay.
okay.
All right. And then the next one, work with the chancellor in ensuring the district is financially prepared for the lifting of the current hold harmless provision. That's an important one. So look at the results. 1 said made progress, 2 say no, but all 3 say retain it.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, and Ms.
Absolutely.
Gordon's here. We continue to have quarterly visits with our colleges, preparing for what lies ahead in the next couple of years. Clearly, the enrollment targets that we have set will better position us when the hold harmless ends with the restoration of enrollments. The way to look at this is revenue generation through enrollments and and essentially budget constraints, not spending.
So I don't wanna go through the next year not having had a presentation on the overall fiscal health of the district, which would include legislation, funding formula, our actual budget,
Mhm.
and our expenditures. So if that's okay, between you, Ms. Johnson, Gordon, and Ms. Hoffman, who's our budget chair, I would like to see something from all you guys presented to the full board.
You will, and on
And,
September,
and it needs to be very thorough, and I want to be able to have good discussion and questions from the trustees, because I have to tell you that for me, it's all piecemeal in my head.
Mhm.
And I know
Mhm.
I haven't been able to
Yeah.
really delve into, and at my former board, we would take a whole Saturday just on budget for K-12. So I think it's important. So I think this is a must.
on September the 13th, we will provide the final budget for the 23-24 year
For approval
for approval. There'll be a public
and
hearing
presented there.
Mhm.
Okay.
and presented there in the thoroughness that you described.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Progress. And the next one, stay abreast of district and college efforts to increase enrollment. That's 100% on both there. I heard you say you've been giving lots of enrollment reports. So you're really good here. You want to retain this one? They say yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And let's go to D under financial well-being. Prioritize improving revenue and limiting exposure to revenue generation, specifically on increasing external, non-restricted sources of revenue. That's a mouthful. So progress was not made, the 3 people say. Can we discuss that one? Improving revenue, limiting exposure to generation.
Okay. So I want to speak for the board, because the board, I knew what they were coming at. This is not necessarily, when you read the goal 2.2, it says participant activities support the financial. Well, of course we do that. What's specific about this goal is that, and it's okay, the board just hasn't seen, besides what we get, from the state, what else are we involving ourselves in? And it has been, I think, new to us. I know some colleges are doing their own thing. I think one college is raising money from a swap meet. That's all fun. but I
Yes.
think the board wants to see, and maybe that's part of the budget presentation we're gonna get soon, right?
It is, and this connects to the previous goal of looking at preparing ourselves for a hold harmless period. That is extramural, other parts of other resources, non-restricted could mean foundations. Could mean the district both as the college foundations. You talked earlier about the dedicated revenue. That's the monies that the colleges generate for their own funds. When they generate those funds, they can use those. That helps to supplant some of the pressure on the general fund, which is good news. The biggest one that we have here really is 10-100. 10-100
I was
Jefferson.
gonna say,
It's
yeah.
not completed yet, but it's a property that we are engaged in an RF. It's a exclusive negotiating agreement at the moment, and that will present the opportunity for the district to receive extramural revenue that's not connected to that's not yet complete. We're moving through that process, and when completed, it'll probably be next year sometime to provide some additional revenue to the district. So those are just some ways that we're looking at that. But there's more work obviously that we do here to look for extramural resources. And that's really done through the foundations that we have.
Yes. And then your bond would be too. Bond.
Well, look, I mean, I'm gonna take my liberty as board president to just say this. I'm not really looking at that. Well, that's all great, and that's been done for years, and the foundations have done a great job to raise money. But what we're really talking about is, are we gonna lease Van de Kamp to, some type of money-making revenue thing? That's an example, right now we make no money off of it. As a matter of fact, it's encroaching into our general fund. When are we gonna do something about leasing it to something that gives us money? I mean, it's a hard thing to say because everyone's like, oh my God, you're money grabbing. No, it's literally what else are we doing? To your point, 10-100. That's a perfect example of a revenue enhancement that we're doing through capital infrastructure or capital project. And by the way, great project. So to me, I see this more that way. I do think the foundations do a fantastic job, and thanks to them, we have done a lot of fundraising. To be honest with you, that's outside of our. But I think, yeah. Anyway, that's what's going
Colleges are able to, when they have, like, what do you call it? Like a swap meet type of thing, and somebody gets injured.
Yeah.
So they're making money, but that becomes a district liability. So, and that's their money, not district money, right? And so that's also how I view that, just to kind of think about what the colleges are doing, what we're doing just as a whole, that may be bringing in money, but also costing us. Yes, the level of risk, correct.
on.
Yeah. Your hand wasn't up. Okay. All right. So you're retaining this one, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. And so here are the comments. I don't believe that we have made any real progress on reducing our exposure with regard to lawsuits and liability. Continue to help educate the board on budget and how we can help the transition out of harmless. I think we talked about those. Yeah. And now we go to goal 3.1, participate in the process and ensure that the district is on track for a successful spring 2023 accreditation of the district's 9 colleges. Progress is being made. Somebody thinks you need to eliminate that. You're so good. You don't
Yes.
even need that as, you don't even need it as a goal anymore. You guys are just beside yourselves.
I'll be happy. I think the board will be happy to remove this year. Well, we never start working
Never
towards
said we're
that.
It's part of your culture now, right?
It's an ongoing, but yeah, for the purposes of the board goals, it would be nice to get rid of it. Yeah.
What are you saying? Remove? You want to
Yes.
eliminate?
Remove.
You ready to? Okay. All right.
And again, thank you to all of the accreditation committee of this district, from our student trustee all the way,
Yeah.
everyone.
It's a huge amount of
Big
work.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may offer a comment, some of these goals are also part of the chancellor's goals. I will not remove it from my goals. But in this one, yeah, so
You better
it's
not.
somewhere
Yeah,
it's somewhere
Yeah.
recorded, as a goal for the district.
okay.
Good point.
All right, let's see. The goal in 3.1 was to participate in the process and ensure that the district is on track for, oh no, we got that. Monitor, and so B, monitor the development of each college's ISER with close attention to the standard that applies to the board. So that was another action you were going to take in this regard. Progress was made. All three said yes. Somebody said reconsider. And then somebody two said eliminate. We don't even need this anymore. So what do you think on this one?
Yeah, it's done.
You've done. Success. Comes off.
Yes.
Okay. Provide leadership and direction on student financial needs, including due diligence to address the unmet facilities and basic needs of students. So, let's see. So we've moved now to institutional effectiveness and leadership. Let me make sure of that though. Yeah, it's 3.2. So you were to review progress and update reports on implementation on housing planning grants received by each. That's what you said you wanted in January regarding the unmet needs at facilities and basic needs of students.
Okay.
Do you recall whether you got a progress update on that?
Yes.
Definitely. So progress was made. Two people said yes, and they also suggest retaining it. You want to? Okay. All right. Good. And then B, view partnerships with the county, local agencies, and other entities with the expertise providing housing assistance, monitor progress of this activity, and what external influence got us to that point. And it says 100% progress on that. Oh, that's great. You want to keep it though,
Yes.
because this is still active. And then the next goal, 3.3, still, let's see, this one is on advancing student access and success by supporting DEI. A, meet regularly with local, state, and federal legislators to apprise them of the district's interests, needs, and initiatives. Progress.
Yes.
Oh, great. And then you're retaining that one. You'll continue, not at the point to take it off yet. Okay. 3.4, consider policies and initiatives that strengthen administrative leadership capacity. So you had an A there, receive reports and updates on progress made in programs designed to promote development of future leaders across the district. So everybody wants to retain that. One says progress is made, one says progress is not. So what really happened here?
If I might, we are making progress in this area. In January, February, we took our presidents and vice president, like a trustee was available to join us. We did a 2-day retreat sponsored and facilitated by colleagues at Aspen. And then since then, we did a follow-up all deans retreat at the new ASU Los Angeles. So we do have some work that we've done in this area, but we can better communicate that to the members of the board.
Okay. Because you had a concern about developing leaders within the district. All right. So keeping that one. And this one, this is on capacity, administrative leadership capacity as well. Receive reports and updates on progress made in programs designed to promote the development of future leaders. That's what I just read. All right. And 3.5, B, receive a report annually to determine the extent to which human resources are adequate to meet the needs of the district. So all three say no progress on that. You got 5 months.
That's correct. This is a big ask.
That's huge.
to
Yeah.
look at a staffing report as we look at our district. That's not yet been completed, and certainly that's something we can do. Hopefully we can get it done by the end of this year. The first and foremost thing is to build the capacity of Vice Chancellor Williams and her team so that we can meet and support our current district employees
Mhm.
and whatnot. So it's a fair assessment, and we've not made enough progress in this area.
Yes.
You know what might be helpful, Chancellor? And again, maybe it's at a committee of the whole meeting or just a a presentation at a regular board meeting. I think we kind of understand the structures at our campuses, at the colleges, but even after being on this board for like 8 years, we don't all understand the structure here at the ESC. So I think a presentation on, you know, who's in HR, what are the positions, what positions are vacant, how long have they been vacant, you know, same with personnel commission. You know, some people say like, oh, well, on the 6th floor, okay, what's on the 6th floor? You know, how many people do we have in our legal department? How many support staff? I think that would be helpful for us as we try to implement this goal because, you know, I fully don't even understand the different departments and how many I don't even know how many employees work in this building, actually. So I think that would be helpful for the board to just get a quick overview, um, maybe in the form of an org chart even.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
Maybe start with that.
yeah, we were thinking about doing an org chart,
Yeah.
presentation at a closed session due to some of the issues that have been going on recently. So I would appreciate that. And then I do want to say though that, and just out of curiosity, um, onboarding, um, I think that would be another opportunity for trustees. Not that either of us would have another onboarding. I mean, maybe reelection, but Um, again, when I was on the other board, I was gonna bring that up. In K-12, I had my onboarding included tours of the main district office
Mhm.
and then just kind of meet and greets with like, you know, just like, hi, this is the new board member, blah, blah. Wasn't anything really deep though. It was literally just like, oh, this is the accounting department, this is HR, and like physically. And I was like, oh, great, I'm glad to see this. But that was pretty much it.
Uh, So when I started in April, I did get some brief overview, and then when elected in November, Sarah and I did spend like half a day here going around all
Oh,
of
great.
the
Awesome.
areas. Yeah. So that was really nice. We got to meet with folks to get an idea of what was going on. So yeah, definitely having more stuff like that and reminders
Mhm.
would
I
be
guess we're
helpful.
all okay with retain, I think.
Yeah, I like the
Okay
org
with
chart idea.
thing.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that'll clear.
And that may even go into the next year.
Yeah.
So the comments, somewhat better progress in this area, too many goals overall. And the second comment, we need to review department capacity and deficiency in personnel, better understand where the roadblock is to filling vacancies in critical areas in the district to smooth out operations.
That's fair.
That's fair. Okay. And now we go to goal 4, which has to do with building capacity for effective governance. And so the board role in 4.1 to engage in individual trustee and board development activities and uphold principles of excellence in trusteeship. And those principles, we didn't define those, but I think the list that the attorney went over today is a good list of that. And also what's in your code of conduct. So let's see what you say here. For A, you said your action would be to revamp board training activities for all trustees to include shared governance and leadership training and curated onboarding of new trustees and incorporation of the latest professional development and training practices. So did the training get revamped yet?
I
Oh,
think
good.
so.
You think so?
Mhm.
We're doing that
Okay,
now.
excellent. So all 3 of those people said progress was made. Participatory. Okay, will do.
Good point. And if I may add to this, we ask our trustees who are new to attend the league's new trusteeship workshops at the end of January preceding our visits to the state capitol. And I think it's a series called Effective Trusteeship, in which 3 of our trustees went this year. In addition to that, we give the board lots of support to travel to conferences throughout the state and throughout the country. And we are engaged with ACCT, HACU, engaged with other professional associations that provide this kind of trusteeship leadership. So, and the trustees want to go, we get them there. We have some states that in which we're prohibited to travel.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, we've provided tremendous support with intention to our trustees so they can go and actually present workshops at a whole variety of locations. Typically, when we go to the national statewide conferences, our trustees are involved with presenting a workshop on one of the best practices that the district is engaged in. I think you're aware of that too, Dr. Benjamin. So I want to emphasize that this is a strong emphasis of us to support you in your role, to position you for good boardsmanship, to use that word.
So does each trustee participate in at least one professional development activity annually? That's good. I mean, some boards
At
will
least one.
say everybody has to do at least one or something
I think what
because the exposure is good.
I think what is needed is just, and I could volunteer to do this, is just board presidents just leaving a little bit of a exit memo, to the next board president about, hey, these are the good conferences. These are good people to, hire for professional development or, stuff. I think I probably can do, because I had a kind of, the former President Buelna did a really good job in focusing on this stuff, on making sure that there was, a lot of involvement in us trying to work together on some of this stuff. But I think that, I had to kind of do even more to get, like, for example, there wasn't an office of board of trustee kind of, manual thing, kind of, or onboarding. That was something we barely did this year in a very official manner. So I think I could leave an exit memo saying, please, board president, make sure that you do onboarding, or all the stuff we've done this year. I'm not saying the past we didn't. We just didn't. I'll be honest. The trustees didn't participate as much. The former trustees as much as these trustees are today. I give these trustees a lot of credit because they're really participating at a great level, state, federal. I think even like Trustee Henderson is on the county trustee association, LACCD, and then I had done it, and Trustee Hobbin had done it, and they would say, thank you. We've never had LACCD represent, so I want to leave something that would give some structure
Yes.
to what we can do to
Yeah.
continue this, I think, progress.
So that there's a smooth handoff
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
person. You're just not
exactly.
coming in cold.
Yeah, exactly. And that they don't go away, what we've been doing.
Right. You have some consistency. And the chair's role is appointment is for 1 year.
It is only 1 year.
Okay.
And really, to be honest with you, between myself, the Chancellor, Lupe Orozco, and Crystal, we kind of have to be a support system to the trustees. It's just, we don't have it as official, but we are doing better than we have. Yeah. And I just, send an email to make sure we include our student trustee in every email regarding, events and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And the thing about student trustees that's so impressive to me that when the legislature put together AB 1725 in the late 80s, I guess 88 or so, they could have selected a representative from any group, and they chose a student to be on every board in the state of California. There is such a strong message in that to me their voice is important.
It's very important.
They could have put a faculty on every board or classified on every board, but they didn't do that. They put a student. It's legislated. I can see I pushed the button here.
And that is, I just want to say, that is why I feel like my exit memo should be in the first line of, order is make sure student trustee is acclimated, onboarded, considered, put in the same email. And
Of
I
course.
have, it's important.
Just wanted to add and would be open to the student trustees' views on this. It started June 1, I think officially, or elected in May. And she sits on the dais. She has an advisory vote on a monthly basis. She runs a student advisory committee with all the college student body presidents, and she's staffed. those people are around her,
Yes,
executive staff, so she
Yes.
could conduct her meetings, get information out, and is prepared to have the student voice around that can inform our policy and decision making. She just returned from the statewide, the student
Mhm.
trustee conference, so we're also invested in her development
yes,
and ensuring that she has a good positive experience and can, again, she's got lots of student voices to represent, so we
Yes.
want to make sure that she's well equipped. So I'm hopeful that you're feeling supported, engaged, and has an office with the other
Mhm.
trustees here.
yes,
has
it's
access
wonderful.
To our staff and whatnot. So I just wanted to point that out because it's a concerted effort of this board and intentional effort to make sure that it's a good experience and one in which she is a resource.
Yeah.
Not ancillary to our operation.
We need to do more though.
Yeah,
We should do more.
it's legislated.
Yeah.
You have to be here. Yeah, we need you. Okay, so, all righty. And then the second one on the board development, regularly review accrediting commission for community college, junior college, standard 4, leadership and governance to ensure trustees are mindful of their fiduciary accountability responsibilities as defined by commission, with emphasis on delineation between chancellor and board roles.
So I just want to jump in here because today was a little confusing and that's my fault. I take full responsibility. So that's why I asked the chancellor to have the consultant come to do that board goal, which was delineate the
Mhm.
roles, fiduciary, all of that stuff. And so I don't know. I feel like we've done some progress after this meeting, probably not before. So this is actually very reflective of before this meeting.
Mhm.
Okay,
But
I was gonna suggest, since we have 2 missing members, maybe of that presentation could be given to them on Zoom or a follow-up.
I think we could definitely
They missed a
look
lot
at
of
that,
the
emailing it. Yeah,
dialogue, but I think it would be very helpful.
thank you.
especially-
Good suggestion.
yes. I do this activity with boards that I call Whose Lane Is It Anyway?
Instead of who's mine.
And so, because it's important and it's easy and tempting also to just kind of just go all over the place. But there are 7 trustees here and 1 chancellor, and you don't need a chancellor. Just imagine how chaotic that would be. Oh my God. And that's why you have that person as your CEO, president, your chancellor, whatever, because that person is the person you hired as your expert. Knows all this stuff, in most cases has lived it, understands it code. There is so much to know. And so you have to
Yeah.
have the
Dr.
faith.
Benjamin, we really don't want his job. We just want his salary.
No, nobody wants a job. You just want to tell them. That's different. Yeah.
Minimum qualifications for a job like chancellor, so minimum qualifications for pretty basic.
Breathing.
Be a voter, live in the service area and be a voter. They're only
Smile.
Yeah.
only qualification.
Be alive. Yeah.
Pulse.
So anyway, we're at the end, and since we're at the end, we're early. So
Yeah.
gives you time to start on something else, but the accreditation standards.
Accreditation standards were just changed through our own process. We revise the standards every 10 years. And so that period of time has come, and they were approved at the commission meeting in June. So there have been some adjustments. So including even to the numbering, because we've gotten rid of the Roman numerals.
Okay.
Just share with that.
Okay.
Still,
Oh, yes, yes.
And I wanted to ask on this one, do you want to retain this activity B of reviewing the commission,
Yes.
the standard
Yeah, I
for?
would-
Okay,
With the revised
it-
language.
yeah,
right.
we'll put the revised. Thank you for that.
Has that been published, Dr. Bart? published, okay.
So I do want to make a suggestion. I'm being a little biased because I work needs me. Um, if it's okay with you all, we could hand it over to Vice President Henderson for some facilitation questions with Dr. Benjamin. We do have until 12. I unfortunately have a work meeting that popped up that I have to be at, or else, it's unfortunate. But because we are early, we could either that or we could end the meeting, but um it's completely up to the trustees because I'm open to all of it. I could still be on for the next 20 minutes, to be honest with you. So
There's really, I think it'd be great to hear from this sort of, wanted to get in my mind some of the sort of, whether it's communication challenges, or whether it's sort of around this. And we listed one goal, but the conversation that
Sue-Ann.
sort of engaged, of whether we can, because I think I want to be sensitive to the fact that we have our committee where we have conversation, we have our board meetings and conversation, we have conversations with our chancellor. I think to find information to, I think presidents and senior staff are always good to be available. And I think they do a good job in informing you, Chancellor, of a request. And I think that's the expectation as we talk to them and ask simple questions that they get to you. And sometimes it's just a matter of your time not being available. So I know I had simple questions with the Deputy Chancellor the other day. And so the general expectations, that's all filtering through you, which is a lot. But I think there's also moments, and I think this is the hard part of how it filters back, of when it goes deeper than the people that were, essentially part of your report structure, right? Now, say at one level, we have sort of representative bodies like the Academic Senate and labor units. And then we have a million other, like, thousands of other faculty and staff that are out there that are not necessarily in a structured official voice. Like I always pay a lot of attention to the structured official voice because we have contracts that we create and standards we create. But I also want to be sort of aware of situations like involving a department matter where like, where is the line there? Like, where is like, hang on and hold on, because that's not an official labor unit. It's not an official representative body. It doesn't sort of find its way to the report structure to you. It feels extended. So if there's something to think there of what may be better practices, what may be more, and I think we sometimes, because we're elected, and that's our space, to be elected, you communicate with everybody, regardless of whether they're at one part of the organization or another. And so I think it's the balance of that conversation. I think to use some guidance. And whether it's language here or whatever, I think it's important. Then the second thing too, and we didn't put this on here, but I made the comment after the last board meeting where we had some challenges with a presidential hire, and to look at all the sort of Noah's Ark committee process that's there, and whether there's some real desire to, tackle as a goal to make more clear, to get rid of some of the misinterpretations that exist when sometimes people think they're a hiring committee, they're really, a search committee, and there may be actually some connection over also to, how we hire faculty, because the certificate process looks a lot like the executive process. I don't want to worry about personnel commission. I don't want to worry about the classified side because that's a very structured process. But the other space, I think, could use some maybe language cleanup, maybe some clarity, maybe some very clean, sort of space there. And that stems from, most recent experience.
Yeah, and in regard to the latter, I just want to comment that I do searches sometimes, and my little business does, but we started doing was to refer to that committee as screening committee, because that's what they're actually doing. They are screening. They're not searching. Your HR is doing that, or you have a consultant they're doing the searching part, but they're screening. And in the screening process, they get it down to a certain number. And that shows that they're screening. They look full, and they screen out or in the ones they think should go forward. And they've completed their work.
You
And
know,
then the decision goes to another level for the final decision about who's hired.
there's a layer, absolutely, and a deeper layer based on recent experience as well, problematic. But but I think, you know, whether it's an initial search,
Mm-hmm.
initial screen, but just to get rid of ambiguity and to be clear, because, you know, one of the things I disliked over the last, you know, several months is being accused of violating process. And, you know, we tend to go to legal counsel and there's no violation of process, but there is an extreme interpretation situation that I think it exists here. And, you know, interpretation gets translated to violation
In terms of role.
in terms of role as well.
Mhm.
And so I think, you know, if we can sort of place as part of our conversation of how we do that, and you know, on top of that, I mean, like I said, I mean, I think we're also want to encourage, you know, the EIA efforts also in terms of having our workforce reflect our students. You know, sometimes, you know, that gets sort of hung up in committee process as well. I think, you know, I think a lot of studies have put it out there. We tend to seek what's familiar more so than understanding the sort of big picture goals that are in mind. So, so like I'd love to get in that. And you know, look, I'd put on the table too. You know, I asked one day when we were in the conversation about 8705, and somebody sort of get me the sort of composition, racial ethnic composition of our faculty teaching those departments. We can't. We just don't. I know it's voluntary, and I know we have, you know, our largest growing faculty category is United State, decline of state, unknown, which is sometimes contrary to that. But I think when you want to get into deeper conversations about where we're disconnected and we're not sort of making it work with our students, those, so it's a two-end piece. I have the executive, you know, sort of concern that we just experienced, but there's also a deeper conversation about how we air out everything that's out there.
Thank you, Mr. Bettis. Excellent thoughts, comments, or reflection points on this last matter you just mentioned about the racial and gender composition of the district. For those who have reported, in about 70% who we've made significant strides. Just in my tenure alone, I'm now in my 10th year. We've offered employment to over 1,000 full-time tenure track faculty, which is over 50%, as you know, of the full-time tenure track faculty. And we've made progress both in racial and gender diversification that we should all be very proud of. But if you look at it in the scale, the overall picture of historical patterns, we've got room to grow. That's a fair assessment, and we will continue to do so. On the other matter related to hiring processes, our district academic senate sent forth a resolution in which they asked to be a part of a discussion which would look at that. They are. Dr. Benjamin referred to AB 1725, the 10+1. They do have a role in the process for hiring presidents and whatnot. So we will involve them. We discussed this last week with them. It's on our agenda to complete this academic year. So we'll keep the board apprised as we move through that and to delineate, to make clear the board's role, responsibilities, and their role to confer, advise on these matters as well in the process. So we've got that. On the first matter you mentioned, it's a challenge, and it's to balance what we saw on the slides earlier today, that the board is not involved with operational issues. So we have to, or should not be, distinguish between situational awareness, which is what I heard you say, and operations, because this is not just in this district, but if we establish a pattern that all these processes that we have in place for discussion, for governance, for decision-making, that you can simply usurp all of those and go straight to the board, then that undermines all those processes and undermines my authority as chancellor. So that's why we don't, don't do that. And you all are very good about giving me a prize and stuff, so we could solve them. When the situational awareness, we will share that with you all. What we don't want is to put you in a position where you're having to make a decision or uncomfortable with the matter with whoever is asking, because that's not the right position for you to be. And nor should you share that with the others, because then you start a serial meeting. Those discussions are right here, not in conversation and whatnot. That's for our collective and individual protection. So that's where it gets a little tricky, but I want to make you aware and say, formally that I desire for you to have relationships with our executive staff. You should. But the direction of their work is my responsibility. So throwing it back like you do, so we can get things done, is a way that it gets on my list, and it ensures that things actually get done, and that things get done appropriately. So, and it's a very good practice of this board to do that. So I appreciate that. So that's the piece of a situational awareness. There's a question you have, raise it to a member of the staff or to me, and we'll get you the answer, because you don't want to be caught flat-footed. And communication is always a continuous area of growth. Because what people hear, what they understand, it could vary by the subject or by the person or by the communicator. And I recognize I have a large part to do that. But so it's a continuous work in progress. But I feel like we communicate constantly, which is good, which is a good thing. When I don't hear from you, that's when I get worried. So anyway, enough of that. I hope I answered some of the
Yeah,
questions.
no. I appreciate that. And like I said, there's, if you weren't busy, you wouldn't be doing work. And weren't hard to reach sometimes. I think the face of the district is it's an important job and responsibility, and people sometimes want you at many more meetings than maybe you can handle. But yeah, I think it's for that bridge in the communication is useful. But I think, in terms of a board goal, I don't know if it rises to the board goal, but I think I'd like to say if taking a good look at our hiring practice that area, and seems like there's mutual interest to do it for once. The last time we tried to talk about something about that, there was not necessarily mutual interest, but recent experience is leading us into a mutual interest space. So it'd be nice to see this done at the end. So mid-year, I take the clock, Benjamin, but I think this may be one that would be useful, particularly because we have a few ongoing hiring processes, right? So we always have ongoing hiring process, but that would be helpful.
Okay, I can just kind of go back through quickly to make sure we got everything down today. And so in board goal 1, in overseeing the performance, we talked about the chancellor reported that he gives you regular reports on enrollment numbers. There's a desire for more detailed information, though, on degree and certificate attainment, dual enrollment, and numbers like that, so that the board can see those. And I'm assuming those go to that subcommittee as well. But there's an interest for the whole board to see those success numbers. And then when we get to 1.2, around receiving reports to better understand needs and support for parents, I think the board expressed very well what the expectation is around that. The chancellor heard that. It's separate from all those other needs that students have. A kind of emphasis to show that the board is really paying attention to students who are parents, in addition to the things that are automatically done to them through state programs and what the college might do itself. And then on 1.3 around DEIA goals, of course, and you want to keep all these. This is one you want to keep, but you do want to look at having a study session. Chancellor. Okay. So you definitely want to do that. And somehow I left all these others off around DEI in the results. And then when we go to 1.4, stay abreast of district and college progress on complying legislation. This one we talked about quite a bit. It didn't happen, but I think we decided on this one, it would go to that subcommittee, and the subcommittee then would bring the highlights to the full board. And I had a question about your POW meeting. That's not a regular board meeting, or is it? It is, okay. Okay. The section of the committee of the whole. Okay. 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 Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you. I was just confused by it. So if we go to 1.5 on commencement exercise, you felt really good about that one. Because prioritize ways to support graduation and funding in addition to being in. So you did a really good job of that. Is that one we wanted to keep? I'm not recalling. Yeah. Anyway, even though it's not quite institutionalized yet. Okay. And then around activities, physical well-being, I don't think we did anything there other than to keep what we had. Go down to institutional effectiveness and leadership. We go down to 3.4 on reporting annually to determine the extent to which human resources are adequate. We had a little discussion around that. And you're wanting to start with an overview of the staff. Chancellor admitted here that not much has been done on that. It's a huge undertaking to do this kind of staffing report. And Trustee Hoffman suggested that you start with your service center here and maybe go office by office explaining the staffing in each one. And then we got to go board goal 4. We're changing shared governance to participatory governance. And then your board president suggested that we have that he, as the exiting, when he exits the seat, does an exit memo with some, I guess, hints or suggestions of types of things to do to be successful in the chair, that he would do that. And then we know now, as a result of discussing 4.1, there are new standards. We want to retain this 1B that you have on leadership and governance, but we need to look at the new language from the commission and then rewriting of the standards and removing of the Roman numerals. Did I miss anything? And then this last one around maybe there's a mutual interest in looking at the hiring process to make some changes to make it more efficient, and to add that maybe in here as an activity. It would go under, what are you thinking? Mhm. Okay. 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 Yes, and maybe do this again on roles and responsibilities in January. Was that the, I thought that was what I heard. Well, that what you suggested? Uh, 2715 a color there. Yes. Okay.
Except that I asked that we have a more in-depth, that she be able to do her full presentation because a big chunk of her presentation was not included at the time. And the important slides that probably most trustees or all of us needed here were not included today.
Yeah, she said it's about 3 hours typically.
So I would be fine if we wanted to reschedule and do that all together as a board of 7 rather than give the other 2 a partial. I don't know if you agree with that, Dr. Benjamin, but I would like to do that. Actually, I rescheduled that budget committee for the morning. I have something yet. So I would say like carve out 3 hours on a day when we have 3 hours, not with other thing else. A Saturday, a Sunday, I don't care.
Yeah, I want to say that, you know, and first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the Board of Trustees and thank you, Dr. Benjamin, so much. Yeah, absolutely. Like I am, very cognizant that, we could have more committee of the wholes, for example. We have not had a Saturday study session this year. I've been very kind of, lenient compared to last year on special meetings, and the reason I do it is because of your respect to the Board of Trustees. You guys have a lot on your plate. Everyone has a lot on their plate.
She had a better word.
What was it?
She said mindful.
Oh, mindful. What did I say?
Said lenient.
Lenient. Okay, I
That's more
apologize.
punishment oriented.
Mindful.
Mindful. I like better.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm very considerate. But yeah, I think because we're, and I just want to say that, we've had back to back, bigger policy issues we've had to deal with. I do think that I would appreciate just, from your office, whatever that's called, that doodle thing where people can put when they're available and, whatever the majority can and cannot. I'm okay with that. I do think though that, there are certain things that were said today. Number one, you know, we should and will always be trustees. And so, if you are gonna miss, let's say, a board retreat, then it should be up to us to decide whether or not we just want to change the date to include all the board. You know, that's something that we should definitely adhere to because we haven't done that in a while. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I do want to respect all the trustees' time, but yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But I think let's see, what time is it? Oh, we still have two more minutes. Hey, we want to squeeze every minute out. But let's see. Student trustee, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know that you heard that we were summarizing.
Yes,
Correct.
Vice President, just let me know.
Yeah. So on for the trustees who weren't absent, I want to make sure we got that right, who weren't here today.
We have Trustee Hernandez and Trustee Buena.
Did you make a statement about what should happen? What they should be. What statement?
That everyone gets, you know, because sometimes we'll do like, oh, well, 5 can make it, so we might not think about the other 2, but maybe there's like I know there's a software that you can use, a calendar software where everyone can put their available
Oh,
time.
to use a doodle poll.
Yeah, a doodle thing so that then the chancellor can know when everyone can make it with plenty of time, advance. Also a day that's not busy, where, and I mentioned a Saturday, we have never done a Saturday thing.
So how do they get the information that the other 5 trustees got today?
The chancellor's office.
We're going to do a
Yeah.
summary,
Okay,
and compare notes, and we'll get a summary to everybody.
okay,
Follow back, because some of these are attachments, board policies,
yes,
ACC, JC standards. There's some
Mhm.
materials that say, here's a summary, and here are some of the materials.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Be a nice summary for everybody.
All right, well, without any objection, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, right at noon. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. And
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.